Hi everybody, it's Charlie here with the Charlie Wills team. Here to walk you through listing contracts, like the Contract 101. Really important to know that at the top of the contract it explains exactly what it is. It's a residential listing contract, exclusive right to sell. So you give exclusive rights to a broker or agent in order to be able to sell your property. So right at the top, pretty simple. Property description. You write your street address, city, village, town, and the name of that location along with the county, depending on where it resides. And all these forms are identical throughout the state of Wisconsin. It's one form, okay? And this is for single-family residential. This is the only one that we're talking about at this time. Next is what is included and not included in the sale of the property. And this is great because it gives direction to your agent about what you're willing to sell with it and what you're not willing to sell with the property. Now, that doesn't control your offer. Your offer has to state what those items are, but this is a really good place to indicate what you would like to be offered for sale and not. Next from there is the list price. What's really important about this is matching that up to the market, okay? From there, we talk about what our marketing efforts are. In our instance, we talk about those very specifically. A lot of them I lay out in our seller roadmap where it goes from initial meeting to staging, to photography, videography, 3D, and then also our social media and open house platform. So that's what we put in there, but that's a really good area to lay out all of the details and duties that we take on. From there, it talks about the firm's commission and how that commission is to be earned. What's really important to know is that commission is not earned unless there is a successful contract and closing that happens. And there are some very specific pieces that go with this, and there's some legal cases that are with this, and this is why I'm being very clear about this definition, is that just because I get an accepted offer on a property and you choose not to sell or the offer falls apart, the commission is not due. Now there are instances where there is a ready and willing buyer and they make an offer and it's about before closing and the seller chooses to cancel the contract. Now there could be commission due. So that's some of those little caveats that are in there, but those are, again, for a deeper legal discussion. Let's see here. What we want to talk about next and what the state does is they talk about dispute resolution, fair housing, and what all of our disclosures and our duties are to customers and clients. So in dispute resolution in the state of Wisconsin, they're wanting to make sure that if anybody has breached the contract, that we resolve it through mutual agreement, right? We don't go through the court system. That's the first step here in the state of Wisconsin. So just so everybody knows that that's how we like to handle it here. Fair housing is put on here. All the fair housing laws are followed. Disclosure to clients and then customers. What it means to there's very specific. There's, let's see, there are 7 duties that are owed through the state of Wisconsin. I'm not going to go through them specifically line by line, but there are very easy ones to remember. And I'll just give you a couple to give you a glimpse. To be fair and honest, to exercise with reasonable skill and care. Like really basic, but there are terms that you should go through this with your broker that you hire so that you can understand what the duties are beyond just the marketing pieces of selling your home. They actually owe you additional responsibilities. And once you sign this contract, you go from a customer to a client. And when you do that client representation piece, there's other obligations and duties that the broker or agent owe to you. There's multiple ways to have agency. So you can have designated agency, meaning your agent is designated only to you, even if they work at a brokerage with multiple agents, like what we do here at First Weber. It means that we can't represent the buyer as well, even if we had a buyer for that. Now, where we can work with a buyer is called dual agency at the same time as working with the seller. So underneath that kind of an arrangement, both parties have to agree to that. So that's why they call it dual agency, because everybody has to be on the same page. And then single agency is rejecting multiple agency and dual agency and saying that you work with a specific agent, but you're not working with anybody else in that agency. So if you sign this listing agreement, nobody, like in our example, because we work underneath First Weber as a brokerage, you couldn't have a buyer from any First Weber agent come in and buy the property. Now, I don't know why anybody would sign that because that's limiting your pool. So just knowing the difference between those 3 options is really helpful. You can't have sub-agency. If a buyer comes into the property unrepresented, they are what's called a sub. You are now treating that person as a sub-agent of what's called the listing. So if somebody's unrepresented, that's completely different than being represented, and that's a very clear distinction to have. From there, the contract lays out what you can do for confidentiality. If you have any confidential information whatsoever, that needs to be placed here so that everybody knows how to handle and deal with that information. That is very rarely filled out, but there are examples for that, and some of those tend to come from, you know, an estate. Like if there's an estate sale and nobody wants to be noted as who is the assignee to the estate, that can be one of those. We've also had people who work in jobs that can't have their identities known. That can also be a place to put those things. All right, we're going on to the exclusion part of the contract. Now, let's say you're a seller, you've talked to one of your neighbors that says they want to come buy your house, and any time that you go to sell it, this is a perfect place to enter their name on there. And also what's part of that is that there's a window of time. Most agents give between 2 weeks and 4 weeks as your window to be able to negotiate a contract with that neighbor. Doesn't mean you have to close in that time frame, just have to have an offer negotiated in that time frame, and then you exclude from paying commission. So again, if you've had those conversations, this is a place to talk about it. All right, there's a bunch of definitions that are acting in here, and one of the key ones is material adverse fact. And I'm just going to read it out loud because I think this is really important, that if there is a material adverse fact, whether you know it as the seller or I see it as the listing agent, it means that a fact that a party indicates is in such significance or that is generally recognized by a competent licensee as being so significant to a reasonable party that it affect or would affect the party's decision to enter into an agreement or a contract. So what's really important there is they use the word significantly affect, meaning it would greatly impact their decision to purchase that property. So right there, if you know of any of those kind of material adverse facts, that's something you need to disclose to all parties moving forward, because you wouldn't want to skip those facts and then get caught later with probably ruining your contract. The other party probably would back out. All right, there is termination and extension of your contract. It's very simple language. With an amendment to the listing contract, you can either extend your contract or you can terminate. These are service contracts in the state of Wisconsin, so very easy to modify that way. Really simple stuff is that if it's occupied by a tenant, those tenant agreements need to be transferred over to the other party. Condition reports are made by the seller and given to the buyer to make sure they understand all conditions that the seller is aware of. Again, material adverse facts about the property. If you know about it, we have a saying in real estate: disclose, disclose, disclose. I don't care if it happened 10 years ago. It's best to just put it on the condition report. Let's see here. Then it talks about your duties and your obligations as a seller to the listing broker, that you'll have the house ready and willing to sell and cooperate with that broker, to cooperate with marketing efforts, to make sure it's clean and ready for showings and open houses. And so all of that next stuff is in that location. From there, it talks about pretty simple things like earnest money, what you do with it, what it's recorded for, et cetera, et cetera. And then it talks about personal deliveries. So personal delivery talks about whether I'm going to personally pick it up, I can have it delivered via fax, I can have it delivered in the mail or commercial delivery service like FedEx, et cetera. The other thing is that we can do them in delivery of email as well in an electronic era. So very easy ways to do that. All right, last pieces. Terms of the contract. How long is our contract for? And then all the parties right below that are party to the contract are also needing to sign this document. So hopefully we stepped you through some really important pieces of the listing contract. From there are additional disclosures that we won't go over at this time that the state requires us to go through. There are also some electronic disclosures that are very important for us to talk about at some time. But we'll shoot other videos for those. But this is hopefully really good information that you can take with you no matter who you choose to use, so that you understand what the listing contract means to you. Thank you for joining us.